Hello and welcome to the latest in the series of Tucker Stone Insights. I'm delighted to be joined today by Global HR and Talent Executive Christy Downs. Christy has an enviable track record of devising and embedding transformational people agendas across multiple different industry sectors, including luxury brands, CPG, technology, and financial services. So thank you, Christy, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Really great to be here. Great to join you and excited to have this conversation.
Fantastic. Well, I think we should jump straight in. And today we're going to talk about a topic that I know is really close to both of our hearts. And that's the subject of employee experience, not just in the way that it's about attracting and retaining fabulous talent in the organization, but also how it drives financial performance within an organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been stated many ways, but basically, if you take care of your people, they will take care of your business. So if you want your customer to be wowed, really start by ensuring you have a clear strategy to deliver an exceptional employee experience. And so to highlight, the business case, there are a couple of examples that I thought might be pertinent to share. One is recent insights from MIT, and the researchers there found that companies in the top quartile of employee experience develop more successful innovations and realize twice the amount of revenue from those innovations relative to those companies in the bottom quartile. Also from PwC, their insights suggest that if companies invest in a superior experience, not only with customers, but with employees, they are able to charge a premium of as much as 16% of their products and services, which really drops straight to the bottom line.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's really compelling to hear about the tangible financial impact of this. And I think that's something that is being recognized in the conversations I'm having, but it's still in its infancy in many ways. So I guess if you're thinking about your perspective on how an organization can either get started or evolve their experience, be it employee experience, but ultimately customer experience as well, what would you say would be some of the areas that you would think about?
Yeah, I think this is such a big topic. Maybe it's helpful to provide just a little bit of kind of background and start with some context. If you think about how the relationship between the employee and the employer has evolved in the last 100 years or so. I mean, if you think of the turn of the last century, this was primarily a transactional relationship. A task was performed in exchange for a paycheck. I think we saw continued advancements in technology, automation, systems. And then a couple of decades ago, the shift is really towards employee engagement. And here employees wanted more agency in their work and what they do and how they do it. And I think companies are really starting to realize the benefits of this. More engaged employees were more productive. They were more likely to stay with a company, as well as a whole host of other positive outcomes. So I think this evolution really continues in this shift, in particular in the past few years, this dynamic. What employees want and expect from their employer is different. And I think other factors like talent scarcity, generational differences, aligning one's personal values with the company values. There's so much beyond just a paycheck and just money, right? That's not the primary motivating factor. So I think really understanding what the workforce of today and the future wants can create a competitive advantage for companies to attract and retain talent. And so I think it's to deliver this outstanding employee experience, organizations really have to take a whole person view, not just look at the person as an employee, but really as an individual being.
Increasingly, as we're talking to DE&I executives and professionals, there is a lot of overlap around the employee experience and the inclusion agenda, and ensuring that we're looking at it from a much broader perspective, and how that can input. So no, that's super useful.
Yeah. And I think, from a definitional standpoint, there's probably, and there is no one single definition, and there are tons of models out there in terms of how you can think about it. And so sort of pick what works for you. How I like to think about it is employee experience is really the moment a prospective employee considers working with your company to the moment they leave, and sort of everything in between with respect to what they learn, do, see, and feel in these areas of, one, the physical environment, two, the digital environment, and three, culture. And so each of those includes subcomponents. Like culture includes things like leadership and relationships, inclusion, are there growth opportunities? Of course, the physical environment today has to consider hybrid and those kinds of models. So, all of this might sound a little bit daunting, but I think the good news is that companies can design for, manage, and measure the elements in these environments to really create positive outcomes. So, I'd say to deliver this employee experience, focus on creating value for your employees around the things that really matter most to them, and then design, manage, and measure those things. So a couple of things that I found really factors for success, if you will. One is just take a holistic end-to-end view.
Yep.
Two is really putting the employee at the center. Use design thinking and really engage them as stakeholders. I think three is the importance of data. This can't be underscored enough or emphasized enough. I think having multiple sources of data that gives you both kind of lagging indicators, but really leading indicators and sort of a future view is really key. And then finally, I'd just say partnerships with marketing, IT, comms, real estate. It's really the collective responsibility of the leaders and the leadership. And I also think external partners are really key as well.
No, absolutely. And I think the data piece is a fabulous point to make, because every conversation that we have on a day-to-day basis is about, talk me through the data, talk me through the metrics, talk me through how you measured that and the impact of that, not necessarily, the mechanism behind it, but the impact from it. So, that being said, there always needs to be a mechanism. So I guess it would be quite useful to understand some real life tangible examples that perhaps you've produced or led in previous organizations where you've taken an organization from X to Y on this journey.
Yeah, for sure. I think, get to brass tacks, some pragmatic examples. The first one I would share is about the candidate experience, and there are a couple of parts. The first one is at one company, we partnered with an external firm that was really specialized in the candidate experience. And so we were looking end to end at our process and wanted to know, how we can improve, where were their pain points. And so in this specific example, what we did was we took about 500 candidates, applicants over a 6-month period. And the specific criteria was that 80% of them did not get an offer. And so what did we find? Well, cut to the chase, we didn't fare very well. We realized that we had nearly twice as many negative scores on candidates having a negative experience versus our peer set. But what was really eye-opening is that of the candidates who had a negative experience, they were twice as likely versus the peer set to take their brand alliance and their purchasing intent elsewhere. And so, that really is that direct link to from employee experience to the candidate experience. And, employees are consumers, and whether they're with your company or, when they leave your company, they're consumers. So I think that's really important to consider. So, some of the things that we took in terms of actions of those candidates that were surveyed, nearly all of them had a write-in comment. They wanted to talk to us. And so we followed up with every single one. And we really, some of it was low-hanging fruit. We revamped our process for how we were communicating with candidates, when, who was doing it, what was the message, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And another element of candidate experience, it was separate, but it was really partnering with our external partner that gave us all of the data in terms of tracking on the website. So in our career site, we wanted to know how they were engaging. And what we could see from that data is how much time they were spending on each page, the number of clicks on each site, what kinds of information they were looking for. So we were able to revamp the site, make it simpler to navigate. They wanted to hear stories from employees around things like ESG and DEI content. So that was really critical for us. And last, I would say in this example is I've always invited marketing in and the consumer insights team to talk with our recruiting teams about, what tools were they using? What were some of the techniques to gather customer insights? How you map, the customer funnel to the candidate funnel. So, those were some examples.
No, that's great. That's a really interesting example. And I think that focuses very much on the external talent attraction piece. I was wondering also if you had any examples of work you've done with your existing employee population around this.
Yeah, absolutely. Another example I can share is a time when we were creating our hybrid model as we were coming out of COVID and really thinking about what the return to office practices would look like. We were creating something entirely new. This didn't exist before. And so we really wanted to get input from as many employees as possible in a quick way, in a cost-effective manner. And so we leveraged technology from one of our external partners. And the solution was really part of the solution was really to crowdsource and use this approach and leverage the technology. So what it enabled us to do was have a tool that was highly engaging, use some gamification, get a really very large sample. So we talked to almost 1,000 employees, get real-time data, easily capture this data, perform analysis on it, so we can understand, qualitative comments, the sentiment of those comments. And it really helped us to shape the future and help us shape the policies that we were to put in place. So yeah, it was a great example there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think in terms of the future opportunities to more closely bring the customer or the consumer experience to the employee experience, I think that is the challenge that every organization either is or needs to be looking at moving forward. And so I think thinking about those factors, are there any specific areas that you think that organizations should be looking at in terms of how they can potentially bring that thinking closer together moving forward?
Yeah, I think a couple of components are imperative. And look, no one has a crystal ball, but right. With what I've seen, I think it's a combination of taking a human-centered approach, like we talked about the whole person. I think that's just very important. Really understand your workforce, understand their needs, their wants, their desires. So that human-centered approach, I think, will continue to be really key. The other piece is of course, technology. And I think it's technology that specifically invests in consumer grade tools. Like you think about people live their lives, online, and there's so much interaction digitally. And so the kinds of experiences that they have outside of work, where things are easier, fast, or seamless, frictionless, you want to create that kind of experience for them, at work, in your work environment. And I also think the other piece of technology is using predictive analytics. How can you use data and compile all of the data that you're getting, not only from like direct sources, but indirect sources? How are they interacting with your wellness programs and usage? And using predictive analytics, I think will really be key.
In terms of the takeaways I can see from here, I think definitely that holistic end-to-end view. So we can't look at these things in isolation. I think communication as well, and taking either your internal existing employee base or your potential future talent and talent you haven't even acquired yet, bringing them on that journey. And I think by the start of things, as well, it's ensuring that this isn't just the HR responsibility. This is a responsibility of every single function and leader within the organization to make this work. So thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed this chat, and I look forward to speaking again on this subject in the future, which I'm sure we will.
Likewise. Thank you, Matt.